Talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
From
Okay.
here?
Okay. Yeah, from here.
From here?
Okay.
Right. Let's
You
go.
want to do it again?
You can ask them about the colony. They came to the colony.
Yes, yes, yes,
will.
yes. We do.
There's a lot to say about this room, but I'm just going to say, so we're in our main studio now, but I want to show you the shop. So we're gonna
Okay.
come in here.
OK OK 嘅，係前向後都有嘅。
So during festival time, our shop is also the storage room because we've converted that into the cafe and the galleries. That's not what that space is normally. The rest of the 50 weeks of the year. So in this space here, oh my God, you thought I was doing it? Thank God. This is Averly. This is the sole puppet builder and the whole organization working. It's actually not true. But Averly is one of the main puppet builders. This is the Kevin and Ting Ting from
Hello.
from Macau. Nice to meet you. So this puppet that she is working on is for the production called Skeleton Canoe, which is a
Thai default.
yeah, Thai default. Yeah, you guys were on panel with yesterday.
Yes.
So, this is a turtle that's supposed to talk to him, right? So it's supposed to. Does it work? Let's see. What was missing?
I think you.
Oh, you just got this. This is how it works. I talk like that. I'm fine. Would you just put my shell back on? Leave me alone.
Oh, that's so
What do you got? You got nothing.
Ah, sorry.
But it rolls, and there's a traditional. You don't have the basket there. Bring it.
No, I think they kept the back.
Yeah. So there's a traditional indigenous artist basket that is the shell.
Yes.
It's made out of birch bark. Anyway, okay. So what we're talking about the space.
Who make the structure?
A bunch of people worked on this one, right? Zach was the main person.
I think Emily made the first one,
Yeah, but
and then
it had to get remade.
Caitlin and Zach did stuff to it because it broke
Yeah.
when it fell.
So actually, there's there's been 4 people who've worked on this puppet. Yeah. So, but anyway, this is this is a lot of stuff that our company does. Just in terms of
Thermoplastic.
So this is So Avery made this puppet. This is off of Tom's design. So anyway, this space. Yeah, this space is full of our junk, but this is you can see the remnants of the workshop are on the side. But in general, we move all this stuff out so that you can actually work in here. But right now, it's kind of a storage room. It came! Yay! That's great. This is a puppet I made years ago. He's a marionette. He doesn't have the strings anymore. So, all these puppets here are these are the puppets that were in the film that I was telling you about. The collaboration.
With the Guillemot.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
So you make the puppets for the film too?
Yeah. So all the puppets. So these were a bunch of deer puppets. There were these rat puppets, and there's a bunch more. They're kind of anyway.
That's so cool.
Where is the big head that stuck with
What?
her head? Where is the big head that stuck
Oh, you
on
know
her
what?
head?
That one they hung on to that puppet, and there's a little bit of they want to use it for marketing stuff.
So they
And I told them that you couldn't do that, and they did it. And actually, the reason I don't want them to do it is it's in such bad condition. They don't get it. They're like, oh, we'll have it, and like, if someone is going to be this close to the puppet, you've gotta fix it and make it. That's a display puppet.
Yeah.
This is a puppet that was used in performance, and it got trashed in the performance, so because she had this thing where she broke it.
Yeah.
So it was totally beat up, and I was like, if you're gonna now, I said we need to fix it if you're gonna take it back to Japan and whatever. So this is that space, right?
Yeah. This is a dream place.
Okay, let's go.
So normally these things are in somewhere.
else? So normally this equipment.
Yeah, different places. I'll show you. You know, so whatever, we split up in the hallway. Okay, so now our studio proper. The thing that's historic, this turns out to be a historic landmark space. Well, the building itself is a landmark building. So the Fine Arts Building was originally made in the 1880s. And it was first a factory for carriages.
Carriage.
Not, it's like the precursor of the car, the thing the horse would pull, right?
Okay.
And
Okay.
and then, but it got turned into an artist's studio building pretty early on.
Uh-huh.
And they came, but it was just a warehouse, and so they came in, and they took out the center section so that they could build the Studebaker Theater down there. And, you know, that's 3 floors of the building. And then, so the top of the Studebaker Theater is the courtyard you'll see here. And that then creates the opening, right? And they wanted to have every studio to have windows. This was the requirement, so that because all the artists would want windows, you don't want to be in a, right?
Yeah.
And so, and it's the only building in Chicago that still has a manually operated elevator.
Yeah,
So this
that's
is
really
very-
cool.
Yes,
Very unique. And so before World War One, there were artists who started a theater company called the Little Theater of Chicago Little Theater, and it was very important historically because prior to that, the theater in the United States was commercial theater that was like sideshows or kind of vaudeville, and there wasn't anyone who was doing drama, who were like doing a Shakespeare play or doing Ibsen or Chekhov in a kind of a serious focused way. What we call now the regional theater in America. So that's like the actors who are working in theater are working in the regional theater. And so the Chicago Little Theater was one of the first ones of that, and they took inspiration from the theater in Dublin that was connected to Yates, that were just doing plays there. And the whole idea of like, we can do Ibsen, we can do Chekhov, we can do Shakespeare in Greek drama, and do something serious. And they worked in this building, in the Fine Arts Building, and they lasted for only 5 years, up until the U.S.'s involvement in World War I, and also there was a pandemic that broke out, and it changed the pandemic, very similar to the one we just had, right? And but during that time, one of the main puppeteers, or I'm sorry, main artists, was interested in puppetry. Her name was Ellen von Bolkenberg, and she was one of the leads in most of the plays, but she went to Europe and Prague and Germany and studied how to make puppets, and came back and made an adaptation of A Midsummer Night's Dream with marionettes, and was performing that, worked on it for 9 months to put it together. And when she got to the point where she was making the program, the word that you would have used at the time to describe the person who operated a puppet would be a showman. That's the word. She was like, a showman suggests someone in a circus or a sideshow, and she was like, these are performers who are doing Shakespeare and operating marionettes with skill, and you know. So she coined the term puppeteer. She was a muleteer, is someone who drives a mule in the English language. And so she took that idea and she made a puppeteer as someone who operates a puppet. And before that, so before 1916, 1917, that word was not in the English language. We didn't have the word or the concept even to say, oh, if someone is a puppeteer, what that means. And to me, that's a really significant thing, because it was the period of modernism and the emergence of the artist in a very unique way that you can trace in all the traditions of Dadaism, Futurism, all that stuff that was happening in that period, where the vision of the individual artist was coming forward, and puppetry at the same time, the movement that we're today celebrating in so many ways, has its origins in that. And you can look at all back there, all the people who were starting to do this very specific iconoclastic vision as a puppeteer and a designer. So here in this building, and is where the little theater was. And when we rented this studio, we didn't know with what space the actual theater held its. Are you looking for the?
I'm looking for the cafeteria.
The cafeteria is actually not open today, but the
Is it?
exhibits are. Unfortunately.
No.
Yeah.
No, we're rehearsing and I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm sorry. Good luck. It was interesting because there's been so much activity in this building. Like the illustrator of the Wizard of Oz books, he had a studio in here.
Really?
Frank Lloyd Wright, who the architect, also had a studio in here. There was a very prominent review called the Little Review that first published James Joyce's Ulysses. All these, that was what was going on in this building. It was a very dynamic.
He's currently here now.
No,
Before,
at
the time. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
so this is in the early part of the 20th century.
Really? In Chicago? I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know that.
It was in I should say Ulysses in the United States,
Oh.
because there was issues. I mean, it got published and there was all sorts of things. But when it got published in the United States, it was considered to be obscene. That book, anyway. There's all these things you're thinking about. Whatever. This is literary history, but. So here in Chicago, this is what was going on and what they were participating with in it, and I always knew that this history of the word puppeteer, this company, Ellen von Valkenburg, and this building, but I didn't know where was that theater. And then so after the pandemic, we started to rent this studio. We had been in another studio. We started to rent this one, just because it was bigger and we needed a bigger space to get out. And then a new. What?
Is it like a private building or a government who owns this building now?
It's a privately owned.
It's private?
It's privately owned, and they've always, and it's for the 120, 30 years, it's always been focused with getting tenants who are either musicians, who are artists or dancers, or there's a lot of luthiers, for example, people who are making violins in studios in the building. So it's in fact, right across the hall, I myself was a tuba player when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
I was studying to be an orchestral tuba player.
What is tuba?
Tuba is the big orchestra instrument. Can you imagine the tuba?
How does it work?
It's a brass instrument, and you're like this. The big sound is the tuba.
Okay.
And the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. So the Chicago Symphony Orchestra had in the 1970s the most famous brass section in North America. Like, they were so powerful and everyone knew them. And the tuba player was phenomenal. He was such a great teacher that all brass players would come and study with him. And I discovered his studio was right here. This is his studio. It's this amazing thing. So
they even keep the name information of it. Oh.
So Arnold Jacobs. So when I was young, this man was like a god. And then he's deceased now, but I couldn't believe it. I came here and was like, oh my God, this is where Arnold Jacobs. Anyway. So there's so much richness, right? And so then we rent this. We get the space. It's kind of anyway, that's just like one small little story of stuff, right? I get the information and we rent the space, and then it turns out that this is the studio where the Chicago Little Theater was. We didn't know that, but a new owner came in, and actually a new management staff came in, and they wanted to start writing about the history, and that's when they produced these plaques, and they found the deed, they found the lease, and with the name, they get it. Anyway, so come on in, knowing that.
So you would literally ran the same.
Yeah, we ended up in the same room.
Oh,
Right?
that's so cool. Can I just ask for something first?
Sure.
Like, because the puppet festival is Chicago International Puppet Theater Festival, but the company that you're making all this production, what is the name? Is it the same name?
Yeah, so that's doing puppet design.
Yeah. Like
So that's the Chicago Puppet Studio.
oh.
That's the
Is that
So we actually don't have a logo of it really, and what we just call ourselves that, and we're the design and fabrication wing of the puppet festival.
so do you produce your own performance or you
No.
just make?
So what happens is people say it was really just us responding to. Go ahead. Martha. No worries.
You guys were great. I'm like so glad.
This was just us responding to people calling. They would call us up and say, "We need a puppet for our opera, or our movie, or our theater piece, or And so, can you make us a puppet? Like this is what would happen." And at first, I would say, "Oh yeah, I'll make you a puppet," and then after a while, I was like, I need some help. Can you make the like? Okay, you make it. I'm gonna go right because I don't have time to make the puppet. And so, so I started to work. Don't worry, Zach. Come on.
So I was like, you guys having an interview.
I like your shirt, by the way. Thank you.
So I ended up creating a kind of a structure, and so Tom Lee and I are the artists, are the directors of the studio, meaning that when the project comes to us, we're the first people to decide: do we do that project? Do we not do that project? And then Zach is on. He manages the staff, and then there's another staff member who, Caitlin McLeod, who is project manages the projects, like the budgets and the scheduling, and then there's 15 or there's between 10 and 20 young artists like Averly who are just hired by the hour to fabricate. And so they're builders. And so it's sort of Zach, Caitlin, Tom, and I who are the ones who know what needs to be built, and then these other people are the fabricators who are building. And it's all just like my job. Like we have a job, we need people. We don't have a job, we got no work, right? So it's a freelance is the situation, right?
So the fixed member, how many? Sorry, again, the amount of the fixed member that is full-time member.
Yeah. So
It's fine.
nobody is full time for the studio.
Everyone is project based.
Yeah,
For the studio.
For the studio, yeah,
I see.
yeah. For the festival, there are some people who are there's actually only I guess in reality there's only 2 full-time people, myself and Sandy, and then there are 3 that are 3/4 time. So that's pretty full-time, but they're 3/4 time. And and then everyone else is like kind of hourly kind of, or they come in for 3 months for the festival and stuff. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
let's go.
all right, so just to say, this was where the stage for the little theater was. And so this was its proscenium arch. That wall wasn't there, so it went all the way back. And that wall was also not there, so the seats went all the way up there. And they also kind of went a little to the side and a little to the side there. But they got 100 people in here.
Really?
Yes, which
This
is
is the size of our House of Puppets black box. It's just
Yeah.
like that.
and they
For the studio.
they were actually, the productions were known for very innovative set design. And I'm just like, in this space, like it's just so small and cramped, and they did like Greek dramas and so.
All in marionette or?
No, in theater and live theater. They only did 5
Yeah.
marionette shows. They had 40 live actor shows, like,
This
in this space. Yeah. Anyway, so but our space is this, and you can sort of see that the come back here. So this is so when it was the Chicago Little Theater, that was the back wall of the theater, and the front. So the stage was this distance here,
Stuff. Ah.
and in a little bit you can stick your head in. Now there's a heater in there, but there was no heater in there at the time.
okay.
So.
So no wall, no
Yeah,
this
no,
wall.
that wall wasn't here,
It's
right?
not here.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And so this is the shop on the other side of that. We were just in there, we were on the
okay.
side. And then this wall is also fabricated, so I have no idea exactly how that functioned, but anyway. But this is
normally,
just like,
what you use for this space for then?
so this is what's happening here is what is usually happening. It's like a smaller shop space, because since it's a multi-use space, many different kinds of people come and work. That one is only a few people have access to that because of the power tools, and this one, it's more open, right? So
I see.
Those are shadow.
these are actually little gift things we're selling for the festival.
I see.
You can, people could buy them. They have our little moniker on every year, Zach and the team, they design a different one, right? So. For sure.
Is it laser cut?
Yeah, it's just laser cut.
Is paper?
It's a mat board.
Mat board.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so cute.
Yeah. So, and,
Get one.
and so this space right here is, this is as this space is, it's just our storage.
Storage.
Keep all our junk in.
This
And
is a
then-
key,
Right. Anyway, but it's a little more jam-packed because of how we've limited the space.
Nice store, right?
And so typically, this cafe, whatever, this quasi-cafe, this space set here, usually is, the different programming happens, we're building in here, or building big puppets, you take over. This is a space that's kind of always getting used for projects. It's not being.
Flexible.
Yeah, it's not like this, yeah, but we also, so the activities that are happening in the space on a regular basis, primarily is this thing called the Puppet Lab, and then there's just workshops in general that happen, but are less frequent, and then the puppet studio building and fabrication. So those are so Zach just manages the coordination of like, we have a really big build, we need a space, and then, but on Monday, the Puppet Lab comes in and they have their own, they need the space, and so we have to switch it over, that kind of thing. That multi-use space, right? And
So
then
where
this-
does this furniture came from?
Oh, it actually sits out there in this patio furniture.
Yeah, there's the elephant out there.
And so you've seen this, I assume, right?
Yeah, I've been in.
Exhibition.
So this is a project where a theater, the Jury
Little
Room
Mermaid.
is the name of the theater. This is an example where they're like, we're doing The Little Mermaid, can you make the puppets, right? And so Zach and Caitlin designed all these puppets and then managed the build. And so they were the designers of it. And Tom then assisted them in their performance. So in terms of, so it's not only the design execution, also conception, but to also go in and train performers to operate them, right? So, but this is just a Disney property, The Little Mermaid, that you're familiar with. Right? So, and it's whatever. It was quite a successful production for what it is, for being a Disney production, right?
It's already done, right? It's on.
Say it again?
The
Yeah, it's
show is
closed.
on. It's closed. Oh,
Yeah,
nice.
it closed actually just last week.
Oh, so you asked them to give you the puppet for the exhibition again?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think. Actually, let me ask Zach. So we make an arrangement with we try to make an arrangement where the situation is that after a certain period of time, we own the physical property of the puppet that they paid to have made.
Oh.
Like, in this case, it's a 3-year arrangement, so that they own them for 3 years, and they use them the way they want to. They're totally fine with this exhibit, because, and mostly what ends up happening, an organization like that, they just put it in storage. What are they gonna do with it, right? They
Yes.
don't have the capacity, nor are they interested to do it, right? And then in the end, they end up getting thrown away, or they give it to somebody, or whatever, stupid, right? And so we wanna, like, how can we hold on to them? And it's another argument we have, because almost every time we do these gigs, we get paid the amount of money it costs to pay everybody for labor and materials. It's always just like, barely can we execute what they want to have happen for the amount of money so in the end, the puppet studio is not a self-sufficient entity. So it needs to be attached to the Puppet Festival. So with the Puppet Festival, Sandy and I are able to find a donor who will underwrite the cost of this space. So all the spaces are all our space in the building is underwritten by, supported, so we don't have to like, oh, we have to pay rent, that is covered, right? And that enables us to do like the programming that can, so then the puppet design, the puppet fabrication it creates vitality in the organization, because otherwise we're not doing anything but scheduling somebody to come in and perform.
Administration.
Yeah, right, but if you have this, if you're building stuff, it's by its nature with dynamic, right? And exciting, oh, you made a film with Dubiga and you made a stupid musical, all of these things are great, right?
Yes.
The variety of stuff is we're working on puppets for a dance piece that's happening in Pittsburgh, and there's another film that we put a bid in for puppets, for these Muppets puppets in New York, and we'll see if that comes through, and other theater shows that are happening in Chicago, that kind of stuff. So anyways, it has energy, and so it's worth it for us to support it, right?
So this room originally?
And so this room is usually a rehearsal room, or for the puppet studio in the puppet lab. So the puppet lab, let me explain a little bit about that. The puppet lab is a program, an incubation program for the development of new work.
Incubation means?
Meaning it like to germinate, to grow an idea of a new project.
Okay.
So the program has two leaders that lead it, and artists apply with a project, and then they're selected through a process. And so 8 projects are selected, and then they meet every week to talk about the development of their work, and they function as a cohort for 9 months while the artist is doing the messy work of like, I'm trying to do this, and oh, that doesn't work, and oh, that does work, whatever, all that process, until at the end, the goal is to make a 20-minute presentation of the idea. It could be of a full-length piece, everyone's looking to make an evening-length work, so it's average 60 minutes, but, just to get something on its feet, sort of a proof of concept, idea, and then we present those in a showcase style presentation. We do 5 performances, and we produce that so that it gets lit and teched, and their work, the idea of their work gets an opportunity to present from the audience, and then we video record it, and we give the artist then the documentation of the work, of the images, photographs, and video to advance the work further. And to actually do the work, they have a small stipend of $1,000 to contribute towards their production cost, right? So this is an annual program, and every year a whole new cycle happens. And so we're currently in our 4th cohort of artists working on projects, and it's grown in interest. The first year we had about 25 applicants, and this last year we had 57 projects applying. So people
all from
Chicago, because no one can come in, right? They're actually, they have to be here to participate, right? So the Puppet Lab is an idea that originated in New York City at a venue called St. Anne's Warehouse, and they ran it for many years, but it only stopped running at St. Anne's 2 years ago. But for like 30 years it was there. And when Tom Lee, who's my collaborator, who co-runs it, he and I started it, and now I don't do anything with it, and Tom and Grace Needleman, another artist, run it. He had done it in New York. So Tom, when he lived in New York, he had run the one in New York, and so he knew how to make it happen. And so but it's a way to create a substantive pipeline for the development of new work.
Yes.
Because like almost every place, there's no place for training,
Yeah.
and there's very little
Yeah.
opportunity for people to make work.
Yeah.
And you need
Workshop.
time, you need space, you need money, you need these things. Like it's not much money.
Materials,
I understand it's not much money, but to be able to have the opportunity to have a group of people who are responding to your work, giving you feedback from your work, this I think is a really important thing for the development of something. So my goal is to hopefully increase the amount of financial support that can go for those things, but mostly it's just to figure out how to keep this, like really make it be part of the institutionalization of the organization, so that it can really start to cultivate, like eventually down the road, one of those shows could end up in the festival, right? Depending on how well it grows. So the other issue is now we have the beginning of a project, which is the puppet lab, and then we have the puppet festival, which is the very end of like when something is completed and done, and then there's this no man's land in between of like how do you get from here to there, right? And so what I'm starting to incubate was this notion of dedicating a room like this one, or the other room we'll go into in a second, to as an artist residence space. So and we did that this fall a little bit with Myra Sue, where I gave her that room for a month. And she just had it, and she could just make it be her thing, where she's working on her thing, whatever, leave a mess and rehearse at the kid or whatever. And likewise with Vanessa Vallier, who is doing the presentation of her work upstairs on the 7th floor.
7th floor.
Yeah.
我哋嗰間做咗成個房 yeah. We had the workshop, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, in that space, yeah, her space. So that's all her stuff, and she had done a month here too. And so that's a fledgling program that I'm working on, and I think even more crucially at that stage in the game, artists need financial support, too. So, and I got to figure out how to do that. And right now we don't have we don't have money for that. So, but my goal, the end goal is something like the model in Stamson at Nordland Visual Theatre. Are you familiar with that?
Stamson.
In Norway?
Norway. Oh.
Yeah. Do you know that program? So the Figure Theatre is the name of the organization, and it's a theater. It's state supported, and they many years ago chose to, instead of making shows themselves, they decided to turn their theater into a full-time residencies venue for artists to spend 3, 5, 6 weeks at a time developing a piece and then making a presentation of it. And also providing some cash for that, like some real production money, not a small amount of money, but a significant amount of money. And they have housing for the artists, so it's mostly international artists who are doing that project. Right? And they do about 4 of them a year, 4 or 5 companies. It changed a little bit. It's now being run by Ingvild Espelli, she's the director of Plexus Polar. Do you know this company? So Plexus opened our festival with their production of Dracula here.
Oh, that one. Oh.
Yeah, and they did a Moby Dick, and very, very established. She's an exceptional designer and director, and now she's running this space. But that several years ago, I did that residency with them, like 6, 7 years ago, and it was such a it was exactly what is you can make work with that. Me and my colleagues went there 3 different times to work, and it was a fantastic opportunity.
In which city of Norway? Oslo?
It's called Stamson.
Okay.
Stamson is a fishing village on an island north of the Arctic Circle.
Okay.
Like the place.
The one, yeah, the Strikeners.
Yeah, it's spectacular.
Okay.
Yeah, it is really amazing, incredible.
I saw, because when we do this research, I found one festival in Norway, which is not in Oslo, in somewhere I cannot pronounce the name of the city,
Okay.
but probably somewhere near there.
There's a very small theater festival.
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah,
Stamford.
yeah. I think so. I
Yeah.
think,
I think you told me.
yeah, in
She asked me, do you want to go? I said, too cold.
No, it's great. In the summer, it's amazing.
Yeah.
In fact, it's not nearly as cold as it is here, actually, in truth. One of the reasons why is the Gulf Stream travels from the Caribbean up, and the very end, it ends at this point in Norway. And so it doesn't even, the water doesn't freeze. It gets very cold, but it's not Arctic, you know, even in the winter. Because when I was there in the summertime, I was participating with a local group of people who would swim in the Arctic Sea every day. It's definitely cold, right? In the summertime, when every morning we would go swim. This is a Scandinavians do this, right?
yeah.
And you know, we could spend, you could spend 10 minutes in the water. It wasn't that bad, in the summertime. But when I went back in January, right, it's great because there's only an hour of sunlight between 12 and 1 o'clock in the afternoon. It's dark the rest of the day, right? But we still swam in the morning, and the water was really bracingly cold in January. But you could be in there for like about 2 minutes. You could do it. It wasn't killing you, right? And it was really great. It was an amazing experience.
Okay.
Anyway, so my goals is it possible for us to create that kind of pipeline, we would say, and not only for Chicago artists, but could I figure out how to get the housing so international artists, like if there were anyone, like someone who was working in Macau, for example, could come to Chicago and make a show.
Please make it happen.
Helmi is doing something in
Taiwan.
Yes.
Taiwan, yeah.
Yes, that is that's an example too.
Actually,
yeah.
at Made in Macau, what we did in Prague is also artist residence.
Yeah.
So they host us, but not the resident. I mean, not living accommodation, like
Oh,
how
no.
you do for
Yeah.
the Chicago artists. They
I
give
see.
us one, something
I see,
like
and you
that.
just right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's any number of ways to move that forward, and so I'm just trying to figure out how. Okay, so the goals of the festival are to establish a standard of what the form could be, like what puppetry is today, is at its best level is really strong and dynamic, and something hardly anyone outside of the puppetry community knows about. It's this. It doesn't. It's experienced in the room. Puppetry is always the stepchild of the other arts, and so we're in this lower level, and but the work that is happening is really sophisticated and has a lot to offer in contemporary culture. And so, to me, my strategy is to establish the festival, because the festival, all I have to do is find the people who are doing the excellent work and bring them to Chicago, so the Chicago audiences go and see it, and they go, this is the standard, and so all of a sudden, their appetite for it is developed, and that's because of the Chicago environment, it's clear that there would be an audience. Like if I could build the festival, the audience would come to the festival. If we have to brand it correctly, we have to create the image that it's sophisticated in the way it is, that it's not something for children only, and we figured exactly how to just bypass that prejudice and just come in with something really strong and dominate it with that kind of work. We do have work for young audiences, for families and children, but it's secondary to, so because we need to establish very clearly the sophistication of the form. And so, and then also make a marketing images that's very professional, professionalize everything as much as possible, as well for the artists who are coming. Give them good housing, give them per diem, pay them well. I want to professionalize the whole thing, so it's not some sort of thank you for coming here, stay in my extra room, or whatever situation is that, like make it, you know, and so that requires Sandy and I to go out and like say, this is what we're trying to do. You know, we want to have happen, and so the funding community in Chicago needs to hear from us. It's like, this is what it could be, this is what we need from you, and then, and there was interest, and there was, I would say there was just traction in the funding community for the civic idea that the festival would be for the city of Chicago, and it would be this kind of rich thing. And that was unlike anything I'd ever done before, because I had been making work as a puppeteer for 30 years in Chicago, and I, you know, getting older after a while, trying to do that, I was working on a project, this adaptation of Moby Dick. The last time I did it, I worked on it a couple times, but then I did it about 10 years ago, and I worked for 5 years on this one production, and I could barely raise enough. I raised enough money for a third of what it cost, right? And I just like pulling it together out of nothing. And it was exhausting. We did the performances of it in Chicago at the MCA, this venue, and this is a very established venue. 4 performances is all we could do. They were completely sold out, but I had no other capacity to do more. I took it to Charlottesville, same thing, very successful, completely sold out. But there was no other life for it. Like I was like, and that was it. 7 performances of that show, right? It was just very hard for me to figure out where in the United States can I take that show? How do I do that? Yeah, there's just. Say again?
New York? What about New York?
Yeah. And what about New York? Yeah. So we're taking a show in New York next month, right?
I know
And
that.
that has been, that is it's been a major fundraising event. New York is not saying, come to New York, we'll pay for you. They're not doing that at all. We're producing in New York. We're doing in New York what we do in Chicago. We're renting the theater. We have a relationship with here, but it's a rental, you know? And we're paying everybody. We're putting them up. We're paying the per diems. We're paying the trip. We're paying the whole thing, right? So that required us to, basically what Sandy and I did was we used our fundraising muscle that we do, that works here in Chicago, and we just transferred it to New York.
What about the government? Do they subsidize you?
No.
No.
No. So our budget is $1.8 million, and so for all of our operations together, and
For
around
the festival?
For the
for the organization,
For the organization?
which is mostly the festival.
Yeah.
So the puppet studio is around it's really around a $220,000 operation to do the puppet studio work. So that's like it's like 1/8 of our budget, more or less. And then and then we have and then the puppet lab is a program. It's just a program, and it's an $80,000 program. So so that's roughly like that. So that's even less. It's like 1/20th of our budget, right? Or less. And then so everything else is the festival. And so so the festival's very expensive, right?
Yeah.
And so it's expensive to run a professional level festival, right? You know, and to do that, there's
for 1 year, right?
That's just 1 year.
1.8 million.
Yeah.
for 1 year.
And so that so of that money, about a third of our money is earned. So earned income, that's being paid to make puppets, paid for tickets, and then 2/3 of our money we have to raise. We have to get it donated. And of that 2/3, about it depends each year, but about anywhere from 5 to 12% of it comes from the government. Yeah, 5 to 12% of the money we have to raise comes from the government. So that means like 80 to 90% of our money has to come from individual people and private organizations.
I realize we are in a totally different like
We're
support.
Parallel universe, right?
Support.
So
Should we sit down to talk about this thing?
Yeah, because
Sure.
officially we have questions.
we could also go to another room. Let me show you my room. haven't seen this? Okay, so this is Myra Sue, who's a local artist. Actually, she was just walking out the door.
Oh, just now
So
she came
she-
to our
yeah,
show.
she's-
Okay.
Her parents are from Taiwan,
Yeah.
but anyway, she's worked in Chicago for years.
Yeah.
And so this is her work. She is a visual artist and works with a lot with technology. But like she's really interested in also this kind of technology, which is this kind of like, actually, hold on, someone went too far with it. But this thing, you know, you can sort of see, right, this thing where you can create. Let me just turn very slowly. It creates this movement of the puppet moving. Right? This visual joke, but it's also the overlay projector. But this puppet right here is the one that she's working on right now, and it's a little Bunraku doll, a one-person operator, but it has a barcode reader in it, in here, and so in the performance there's barcodes on objects and puppets and props, and so you see the puppet look at something, and then you understand that the image appears on a screen, and then it goes to a barcode and it explains, and it starts to tell the story. You understand what I'm saying, right?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
And it's just super.
佢有個 barcode reader 可以睇到到時演出嘅時候咧，唔同嘅地方會有啲 barcode，然後佢 read 到嘅時候，佢會讀啲字出嚟。
Oh, okay, I see.
But you know, she's got this pretty great, you know, design where she was figuring out how one person could operate. I'm not very good at it, but anyway, whatever.
I did that, but with, you know,
Chopstick.
fingers, who can use chopstick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you know, also just interested in the you know the magic lantern, you know, the different kind of shadow puppetry work, right? So these are the magic lanterns. This is from a film that she made in the pandemic.
Oh
It's
my
an
god,
animated
this is so
film.
cool.
Yeah, actually, if you go to the Cultural Center,
Yeah.
have you heard of the Cultural Center? So it's on on the same street, Michigan Avenue. You go north. It's in our brochure, the Cultural Center. There's an exhibit of Chicago puppeteers work, and this film is on a monitor, and you can see it.
Wow.
Okay.
It's a very small, little, simple film.
Yeah.
You can see, but
This one.
and you know this kind of thing too, right? So she's doing, you know, scroll work like this, you know. Yeah, horizontal as well. Yeah, that's for sure.
And the little one is dying. So will she perform in the festival?
She's not performing in the festival.
No. Just exhibition. So she is one
Yeah.
of the puppet lab artists.
Actually, she was in the Puppet Lab. Yeah, this show was created last year. She was last year. She made this work in the Puppet Lab. Yeah, yeah. And
Do you provide like workshop, lessons or like dramaturgical advice for the puppet lab artists during their stay?
Great question. Currently, I would say there's nothing formally done. But what I do is I come in and observe them, and then I give them feedback. You know, so I definitely advise them on their project. And this is the whole thing about the residency that we want to kind of create is do some of that work, because myself, Tom, and other puppet designer people, it would be so helpful to just like, hey, you can make this puppet like this, you know, be sort of
Involved,
consultants,
yeah.
right? Yeah. And so that's what I'd like to have as part of our.
That's important.
Yeah,
For artists who work alone.
Yeah, it's true. Because you can just find that it's helpful. But anyway, this is a small room that can get used as a dedicated
This-
studio space.
This exhibition will be on until the end of the festival, right?
Yeah, this exhibit is up for the festival.
Okay.
Yeah. The windows open around here.
Yes.
And your office is
Oh, you
the
wanna
other
go?
room.
You wanna go? Let's go look at the office real quick.
Do we want to sit there? We can move the things there.
Yeah,
in the
let's go
office.
there. Yeah.